So it's a pride privilege for us to have with us. And today we have a very beautiful topic named feminism, religion, and philosophy. And we have invited one of the senior professors of our country, Professor Hamidulla Marazi, uh, the former director, Institute of Islamic Studies, University of Kashmir. And he needs no introduction because he's a senior professor. He has already participated in many webinars of philosophy family, and he's very popular with all of us. And he has a lot of contribution to the world of philosophy, to the world of Islamic studies, and he has 3 decades of teaching experience in PG level. He has also guided many PhD students and field students, and till now he's guiding the research scholars on various issues. He has visited many countries. He has also acted like visiting a professor in our country and abroad. He is a member of many professional bodies and many technical bodies. I don't want to spell much of him because he has a long list of participation in different universities of the country and abroad to speak on various issues of philosophy, religion, and Islamic studies. And he has been conferred upon a number of awards, like Distinguished Academic Award, Speaker Special Award, Silver Jubilee Award, many awards that it is not possible to speak all kinds of awards that is given to him. So today, simply I bow down before him because he has accepted our invitation to be here today on this specific topic, the feminism, religion, and philosophy. And today we are also very fortunate that many senior professors are with us, like Professor Ranjit Ghosh sir, Professor Anirudh sir, Professor Abhinash sir, and Professor Srinivasan sir, Professor Chotan sir, Ruma Wani madam is also with us. Okay, so I don't want to reflect on the names of all the senior professors that they are with us today. I simply welcome all the scholars and philosophers to be associated today to witness this program, to participate in the program, and to have their observation on the specific topic. I welcome Professor Pramod Kumar Das, but he's not because he's on the way to Hyderabad to participate in an international seminar. So I extend my best wishes to Professor Pramod Kumar Das that he has been selected to act as a research person in an international seminar at Hyderabad. I also welcome Professor Dr. K. Uman Rao, the regular moderator, the co-admin of Philosophy Family. And with this, I once again extend a happy welcome to all the viewers of today's webinar, and we are eager to listen the talk of Professor Hamidulla Marazi, the senior most professor of philosophy of our country. And with this, I now request Professor Hamidulla Marazi to commence his speech. Over to Professor Marazi, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Can I share my this presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Yeah. So, was it visible?
Not visible, sir.
Okay, it is visible.
Sir, you are visible, but presentation is not visible.
Okay, no problem. If I am visible, no problem. Then I can manage. Thank you very much. So, first of all, I am very thankful to Professor Das, Pramod Kumar Das, although we'll be missing him. So, he is not with us because he is going to attend a seminar. And his wisdom and his wise remarks are very valuable for us. So we may miss that, but I wish him all the best for his conference. I also am very much enlightened and very much happy to have people like Professor Srinivasan Krishnamurthy, Dr. Kailash Chandra Moharana, Dr. Romavani, Sayyid Amin Bukhari, Kumana, Om Narayan Raoji, Arati Dharmul Bish, and Avinash Srivastava, and so many others. So it is really a very nice occasion to talk about a very important, interesting topic. It has been my habit whenever I have to deliver a lecture, I see at least more than 50 books or 100 books sometimes. So I have been preparing for this
Rati,
lecture
please,
for a
Rati
long time.
Dharmesh, please mute yourself, please. Rati Dharmesh, please mute yourself because we are recording. We want clear recording. Please, Dharmesh, please mute yourself.
Okay, so I have been just trying to read as many as possible books to prepare for this lecture, because this is a very important lecture. Then I came to this conclusion that to speak about religion, feminism, and philosophy, it will not be possible to speak in one lecture. And I may request to the organizers that we may arrange a series of lectures on this subject. I will try to cover as much as is possible today, but I think that every item, every ingredient of this subject needs a separate deliberation, because so far as philosophy is concerned and women, what philosophers have said about women, very important. So what is the reach of philosophers when they talk about women and their issues? And from very beginning to modern times, what philosophers have been saying about women and issues of women, problems of women, status of women, and then how it was just converted into a philosophy that is known as feminism. And we have a full-fledged system of philosophy known as feminist philosophy. And then there are varieties of feminist philosophy. There is radical feminism, there is black feminism, there is Islamic feminism, there is Arab feminism, there's Iranian feminism. And there are so many varieties of feminism. And all these varieties need our attention. And then finally, when we talk about religion, so how we can correlate philosophy, feminism, and religion together, and what the people have talked about these all subjects. So this is a very interesting subject, but as I said already that we may have to have several lectures on the subject, and if the organizers allow and they agree, so we can have several lectures on this subject. So now I will start today's presentation by your permission, sir. So the topic is women between philosophy, religion, and feminism. So first of all, I would like to talk about philosophers, what they have said about philosophy, and what they have said about women, and what is the relationship between women and philosophy. So we can understand that Oken Susan Moller, she has written a book, The Publication of Women in Western Political Thought. So that was a landmark book on the subject, especially concerning feminist political theory. Aken's work was the first book-length feminist analysis of the major political philosophers of the Western tradition. And she has just tried to set the stage for subsequent discussions. She examines the works of Plato, Aristotle, Rousseau, and John Stuart Mill. She concludes that for each of these theorists, women's role is defined exclusively by her function in their patriarchal family, and especially her reproductive role. So we can understand. She argues that this functionalist attitude towards women is an integral rather than an incidental part of these theories. And we can understand so how she has just tried to contextualize the philosophical discussions about women in the context of feminism. And she has just mentioned the views of philosophers about women from the very beginning. Among the male philosophers considered important in their tradition, only Plato and John Stuart Mill seriously challenge received philosophical notions about women. So we'll find that there are such negative views about women which have been espoused by the philosophers, great philosophers. And these exclusions and dismissals have inevitably led to a project which is the basis of what is now called feminist philosophy. So why there was the need of emergence of feminist philosophy? I had the good fortune to have visited the Seneca Falls, where this movement of feminist has emerged. Many feminists argue that the traditional assumption that the male is the norm or ideal of humanness has shaped philosophical concepts, questions, and theories which now need to be critically challenged. So this is the point which we need to understand. And I have developed my own understanding because people are sometimes confounding the notions of women which are found in religion or in philosophy, and then those are being just integrated with the feminist views. But we need to just categorize all these views into different sections, because otherwise it will be a category mistake to say the least. Speaking through Socrates, Plato says a number of things about gender, family, and the organization of society. In Book 5 of the Republic, Socrates offers a striking pronouncement of sexual equality, although he insists that there are natural differences between human beings in terms of skills, talents, and potential. He denies that these differences align with sex differences. There is no pursuit relevant to the management of the city that belongs to a woman because she is a woman, or to a man because he is a man. But the various natural capacities are distributed in a similar way between both creatures, and women can share by nature in every pursuit and men in every one. Though for the purposes of all of them, women are weaker than men. So you can understand, although Socrates has tried to just talk about women in the equal terms with men, at parity with men, but at the end he says that women are weaker than men. According to Socrates, there is no pursuit of the administrators of the state that belongs to women because she is a woman, or to a man because he is a man. But the natural capacities are distributed alike among both the creatures. And this is found in this book which I have mentioned, Plato Republic, translated by Paul Shorey. He thus explicitly denies that there are natural female traits, biological or psychological, that would exclude women from ruling, so that childbearing will not interfere with these women's education and activities. Socrates recommends that children born as a result of cohabitation in brief marriage festivals will be taken over by the officials appointed for this, men or women or both, and raised communally. And Parmenides provides the first instance of a female figure who leads men to wisdom through her own reasoning and argument. And a central example is the figure of Diotima, who supposedly taught Socrates his philosophy of love. So you can see Diotima, a Mantinean priestess, who is one of only two women philosophers mentioned in Plato's dialogues, the other being Aspasia in the Menexenus. Traditionally, Diotima has been considered simply a literary device. However, while the evidence for assuming that Diotima is a literary device is strong, it is not conclusive. So it seems that one central consideration for assessing this possibility is the fact that Diotima's notion of beauty is not identical with the Platonic notion of the form of beauty. This suggests that her views are those of a real person. So you can see that what are the views of Socrates about women, and he just brings the figure of Diotima and just talks about beauty. A further consideration is whether the literary device of male and thus inferior philosopher would have worked to enhance Socrates' discussion. The fact is unlikely indicated that she actually existed. Certainly, if Dharma was indeed an historical figure. Her inclusion in Plato's dialogues would make her a significant figure in the history of women philosophers. Although he remarks on the general physical weakness of women relative to men, Socrates does not think women are naturally or inevitably inferior. Understanding Socrates' views on women is further complicated by his idea that for the guardian classes, women and children should be shared. He describes methods for matching the best males with the best females. And you may be knowing about the communism of wives and communism of property of Plato as well. And we have, for example, Democritus also, who has thought ill of women, and he did not like that we should have children, because in his view, their education interferes with the philosophy. And women, according to other philosophers like Pythagoras and others, also need our attention, so that we have a comprehensive view about the perception and perspective of philosophers about women. So a very famous poet declared women merely as a shuttle. And he thinks that there are an antagonistic relation between the opposites of female earth and male Psyche, as well as between the male and female gods. Indeed, he depicts women as a punishment for or a danger to men. So you can see how he has just depicted the picture of women. And then Pythagoras, he has maintained that women as a sex are more naturally akin to piety. At least Pythagoras has a very, very positive and very, good view about women, and that is also a very healthy view. Based on reports of philosophy, it is apparently Pythagoras who introduced the normative framing of these pairs of opposites as binary opposites. Thus, male was framed as superior to female, as light was to darkness, good to evil, and so forth. Moreover, by assertion, the superior of each pair became linked to each other, and the same happened for the inferior of each pair. Thus, female became associated with dark, evil, and so on. Although he had talked very, in nice terms about women, but then he just also has made some, negative remarks about women as a whole. Pythagoras offers the earliest philosophical thinking about what is now labeled by feminist philosophers as the gendering of reason and morality. The moral ideal for all humans is harmony, both of the soul and in society. And both sexes are equally capable of achieving harmony through chaste behavior. However, the route to harmony between husband and wife is different for each sex. Women are to practice the virtue of obedience, while men show virtue in ruling. Pythagoras' view of women is ambiguous, or he holds that outside of the realm of material life, the sexes are equal. Sexes are equal. He views reason as gender neutral, and thus holds that both sexes are capable of philosophy. This explains the distinctive presence of Pythagorean women philosophers and may also explain their philosophical interests. Early signs of the gendering of language can also be traced back to the thought of ancient Greece. It was apparently the sophist Protagoras who introduced the notion of nouns being male, female, or neutral, even though this framework was not dualist. What is problematic is that the choice of gender for each word was not random. Rather, the gender of the word supposedly reflected the gendered nature of the object. In this way, language reinforces gender divisions, specifically divisions that were not value neutral. Plato has some different notion about women when he says genders should have all things in common, including women and children. However, some education is recommended for both. In contrast to Plato, Aristotle explicitly claims that women are neutrally inferior to men in skills, abilities, and roles. In the Politics, he blatantly states, quote, as between male and female, the former is by nature superior and ruler, the latter inferior and subject. Hierarchy is natural for Aristotle, who also argues that there are natural slaves, though for him this is not a rationalized category. Natural slaves are defined as those with lesser rational capabilities. Men are superior to women. Masters are superior to slaves, and Greeks are superior to non-Greeks. So you can see the racial, understanding of Aristotle. Thus, Plato had advanced a radically innovative proposal for how women might live in a man's world, and his student had just reversed that. Yet his proposal that women participate equally in men's activities and pursuits, devised and elaborated to bring out the best in masculine nature, still implies that women could become guardians only by becoming just like men. Modern variations on this theme, where women enter professions on the often implicit condition that their femaleness will not make a difference or only too familiar. It is Aristotle, however, who is credited with offering the first comprehensive theoretical account of the superiority of men and their correlating superiority to in virtues, capacity for reason, and social status. In Aristotle's account, the inferior virtue and reason of women potentially exclude them from the good life. This account not only restricts women to the life of the household, but also makes it plausible to claim that their role in maintaining the household is required in order to give men the freedom and comfort they need to pursue the good life for themselves. Because of this, and given Aristotle's status in the canon, his work has been a central target for feminist philosophers working on ancient Greek philosophy. Aristotle goes into detail on the nature of women's inferiority. In his Generation of Animals, he states, quote, "The female is as it were a deformed male," unquote. The female on Aristotle's accounts is associated with passivity and imperfection, whereas the male is associated with activity and perfection. His theory of reproduction postulates an active sperm acting on the passive raw material supplied by the mother. So you can understand how he talks about women. On his view, the purpose of human life, it is only route to fulfillment is full personhood and participation in the political community. This fulfillment, however, is available only to some. Women and slaves are excluded. So Aristotle writes, the male is by nature superior and the female inferior, and the one rules and the other is ruled. This principle of necessity extends to all mankind, where there is such a difference as that between soul and body, or between men and animals. The lower sort are by nature slaves, and it is better for them, as for all inferiors, that they should be under the rule of a master. For Aristotle, neither women, children, or slave can be citizens, because only citizens can participate in the political life of the Greek state. Women are denied such participation, as are children and slaves. Since virtue in which the best human qualities are realized is achievable only through political participation, it too is inaccessible to women and slaves and children. Many of the presuppositions that have underpinned women's disadvantaged social positions in the Western world have their roots in this ancient history, especially in the thought of Aristotle. So we can't blame religion for this, or philosophy in general. The claim that a woman's nature and all of her possibilities are consequent upon her biology, her reproductive biology, is one of the most ancient and resistant of these ideas, long invoked to justify social arrangements that keep women in her place. Aristotle is only the best known ancient formulation of a biological determinism. Variations on Aristotle's ideas infuse canonical Western theories of human nature from classical times to the 18th century. Rejecting Aristotle's view, Hobbes asserts that all people are equal and explicitly includes women in this claim. However, his argument for this claim yields an idea of equality that we will now consider thin or minimal. According to Hobbes, all people, whether men or women, are equal because on our own, in the stage of nature, we cannot subdue each other without a fight. A human being is naturally dominant over an ant, for example, because a human can dominate an ant without much struggle or effort. But no human being is naturally dominant in this sense over an other human being, over any other human being. Even the strongest person has to sleep and so can be overpowered by the weak. Even if men are on average slightly physically stronger than women, Hobbes points out that a battle would still be necessary between men and women, and so denies that men are naturally superior. For Hobbes, then, human equality is understood as the absence of natural dominance among humans. So in his state of nature, war of all against all is the principle. The English philosopher John Locke also maintains the natural equality of the sexes, but he has a more substantial notion of what this means. For Locke, men and women have equal natural capacities for rationality, which for him entails understanding and following natural law. Despite their claims about natural equality of the sexes, though both Hobbes and Locke endorse a patriarchal social structure, they accept the traditional idea that there is an analogy between the family and the state. The sovereign rules the state by consent of the governed, and the head of the household rules the family by consent of its other members. For both Hobbes and Locke, there can be only one head of household, because one can serve two masters, and men will naturally assume this place. On the other hand, both think that sovereigns can be queens, and Locke argues that unhappy wives should be able to divorce their husbands. The topic of sex difference comes up in the political philosophy of Hobbes and Locke because they are speaking directly to questions of human nature, equality, and authority. Questions about women and their relationship to men and place in society arise naturally in the context, particularly given the traditional analogy between the state and the family. Descartes, on the other hand, is primarily interested in metaphysics, concerned with the questions of reality and being, and epistemology, the study of knowledge, and questions of sex do not necessarily arise in those discussions. Descartes does not have much to say about social or political philosophy in general. Likewise, in Spinoza's metaphysical and epistemological work, there is no discussion of sex. French thinker Descartes, as we mentioned, the most famous and arguably the most important philosopher of the 17th century, avoids the question of sex difference and the various social and political roles attached to each gender. At least part of the explanation for why some philosophers say so much about women and others so little has to do with the kinds of philosophical issues with which they engage. Descartes, on the other hand, is primarily interested in metaphysics, as we have already discussed. The Dutch philosopher Spinoza says little about women also, but he claims that they are most decisively not equal to men. He explicitly denies women political rights, asserts their mental inferiority, and worries about their ability to seduce men into making irrational decisions. And Descartes, the most famous, as we have mentioned, his views were totally different from the earlier philosopher, but he has not said much about issues related to women. In the 18th century, Immanuel Kant and Rousseau loomed large, and both had much to say about women. The German philosopher Kant claims that women are mentally and morally inferior, incapable of participating in political institutions, and that their primary purpose is to civilize men and society. Considers some representative quotations. He dismisses scholarly women by saying that they use their books sometimes like a watch. That is, they wear the watch so it can be noticed that they have one, although it is usually broken or does not show the correct time. So women are incapable of understanding moral principles, he says, and they act instead on the basis of sensations and pleasures because, quote, women will avoid the wicked, not because it is unright, but because it is ugly. and virtuous actions mean to them such as are morally beautiful. Women's education should therefore focus on, quote, making only that please them which is good, unquote. In his view, quote, laborious learning or painful pondering, even if a woman could get very far with them, destroy the merits that are proper to her sex, unquote. Attempting to teach women abstract principles or difficult subjects would be not only ineffective but also deleterious to their womanhood. On the question of woman's nature, Kant says one can only come to the characterization of the sex if one uses as one's principle not what we make our own end, but what nature's end was in establishing womankind. These conceptual ends can only serve to indicate the principle for characterizing women, a principle which does not depend on our choice but on the higher purpose for the human race. These ends are, first, the preservation of the species; second, the cultivation of society and its refinement by womankind. Because the end or purpose of women is to have babies and serve as a civilizing and refining force for society. And because these ends are set by nature, it follows that individual women cannot and should not set their own goals. Men, on the other hand, should be free to pursue self-chosen ends, including political ones. Given that he held these views, it is unsurprising that Kant declares women incapable of participating in public life or the political sphere. Quote, woman, regardless of age, is declared to be immature in civil matters. Her husband is her natural curator. Women cannot personally defend their rights and pursue civil affairs for themselves, but only by means of a representative, unquote. So you can see that how he represents women. He also excludes women from citizenship on the grounds that they are not economically self-sufficient. For Kant, women and children cannot take part in political decision-making, but have some rights as passive members of the state. He claims that this exclusion is natural and inevitable. Of course, history has proven this empirical claim wrong. While young children are naturally, economically, and otherwise dependent on others, women clearly are not. Kant's writings also express views that denigrate certain groups because of their race. He claims that the Negroes of Africa have by nature no feeling that rises above the ridiculous. And that, quote, because the black man is so amply supplied by his motherland, he is also lazy, indolent, dawdling, unquote. Moreover, Kant invokes his views about racial hierarchy in justification for an elaboration on the institution of human slavery. Kant's sexist and racial remarks are inconsistent with the basic tenets of his moral philosophy and theory, which emphasize the fundamental equality of all people on the basis of their rational capacity to set and pursue their own ends. The logic of Kantian moral principles forbids slavery. Note that the central texts of Kant's moral or political philosophy do not make a reference to race or gender. Rather, these subjects are relegated to what some scholars think of as his peripheral writings on anthropology and aesthetics. Rousseau, in his principal work of moral and political theory, The Social Contract, likewise makes no reference to gender or race. However, in the French philosopher's famous treatise on education, Emily, or on education, he sets out his arguments for different education for boys and girls. Boys were to be raised to be independent and autonomous, girls to be submissive and pleasing. Rousseau devotes Book 5 of Emily to detailing the nature of women and the education that he sees as suited to their nature. He states, quote, if woman is made to please and to be in subjection to man, she ought to make herself pleasing in his eyes and not provoke him to anger. Her strength is in her charms. By their means, she could she should compel him to discover and use his own strength, unquote. He calls this a, quote, law of nature. Rousseau delineates the implication for education. A woman's education must therefore be planned in relation to man, to be pleasing in his sight, to win his respect and love, to train him in childhood, to tend him in manhood, to counsel and console, to make his life pleasant and happy. These are the duties of woman for all time. And this is what she should be taught while she is young. It should be clear why many feminist historians of philosophy hold sharply critical view of Kant and Rousseau, and these are the reasons. The difference between the views of women on women held by Kant and Rousseau in the 18th century and Hobbes and Locke in the previous century is striking. The earlier philosophers look positively innocent in comparison to the later ones. Why one might ask, is this the case? First, it is worth noting that only in the 18th century did the beginnings of women's movement emerge. For the 17th century thinkers, women's social and political equality was purely hypothetical. It was not a real possibility that women would demand, let alone be granted, equal rights to men. Hobbes and Locke could speculate about women's equality without any expectation that it would lead to political action. By contrast, in the 18th century, women were involved in such political events as the French Revolution of 1789, insisting that they be included with men in the general claims about the equality of all people. It is unsurprising then that Rousseau admonishes women who agitate for legal equality, quote, women do wrong to complain of the inequality of man-made laws. This inequality is not of man's making, or any rate it is not the result of mere prejudice, but of reason, unquote. Rousseau saw the unequal treatment of women as grounded in reason, and his arguments for women's natural inferiority to men as entirely rational. The English philosopher John Stuart Mill would later come to be known as the first male feminist, and at least he has just done justice to women to a great extent. With his co-author and future wife, Harriet Taylor, Mill wrote treatises arguing for the political and social equality of women. Although the authors viewed their proposal as ripe for enactment, their ideas were met with mockery and scorn. Other figures in the utilitarian movement, Marcus de Condorcet of France and the Bretons Jeremy Bentham and William Godwin, also held fairly progressive views towards women, in keeping with utilitarians' reform-minded politics, the maximum pleasure of the maximum number, which drew on enlightening thinking. Utilitarianism very generally is the view that morality, right action maximizes utility, the technical term by which the utilitarians meant happiness. Utilitarians do not prioritize the well-being of some human beings or others. Everyone's utility counts equally in the utilitarian calculus. This tendency towards equality is evident in the writings of Condorcet, who argues in his famous 1790 essay on giving women the right of citizenship. The German philosopher George William Friedrich Hegel takes a position on the woman question in his Elements of the Philosophy of Right. He describes men as active and women as passive, and a woman's place in the family. Quote, the difference between men and women, he says, is the difference between animals and plant. The animal is closer in character to man, the plant to woman, for the latter is more peaceful, a process of unfolding whose principle is the more indeterminate unity of feeling. When women are in charge of government, the state is in danger, or their actions are based not on the demands of universality, but on contingent inclination and opinion, unquote. Although Marxist feminism is one of the most popular strands of feminist thought, the writings of Karl Marx himself lack both coherent, sustained, and plausible account of the nature and origins of women's oppression, and a precise articulation of an alternative to patriarchal gender roles. However, Friedrich Engels, Marx's fellow German philosopher and the co-author of his 1848 pamphlet, The Communist Manifesto, in 1884, wrote an essay on the family that contains some surprising insights into the nature of gender opposition. For example, under capitalism, he says, the modern family is based on the open or disguised enslavement of the woman. Engels spells out the connections between the nature, creation, and development of family structures on one hand and property relations on the other. If history had progressed as Engels thought it would, we would have seen the elimination of both socio-economic class difference and the subordination of women. Nietzsche, among other 19th century philosophers, the German thinker, is perhaps most notorious for misogynist remarks. For example, in his famous aphorism from the 232 from the 1886 work Beyond Good and Evil, he declares that, quote, from the beginning, nothing has been more aligned, repugnant, and hostile to women than truth. Her great art is the lie. Her highest concern is mere appearance and beauty, unquote. One of Nietzsche's main influences was Arthur Schopenhauer, whose 1851 essay on women avers, quote, one need only look at a woman's shape to discover that she is not intended for either too much mental or too much physical work, unquote. He continues, quote, women are directly adopted to act as the nurses and educators of our early childhood, for the simple reason that they themselves are childish, foolish, and short-sighted, unquote. I'm sorry to just quote even these, very, very objectionable terms they have used for the woman, which are the best creation of God otherwise. He gives evidence for this characterization, quote, nothing different can be expected of woman if it is borne in mind that the most eminent of the whole sex has never accomplished anything in the fine arts that is really great, genuine and original, or given to the world any kind of work of permanent value, unquote. Schopenhauer declares that it is women's nature to obey and denies that they have a sense of justice. He concludes the essay with this declaration, quote, the woman is by nature intended to obey is shown by the fact that every woman who is placed in the unnatural position of absolute independence at once attaches herself to some kind of man by whom she is controlled and governed. This is because she requires a master. If she is young, the man is a lover. If she is old, a priest, unquote. We hardly need to point out that among the countless counterexamples of women achieving and maintaining independence, just a single one of these examples would suffice to falsify Schopenhauer's claim as a matter of empirical fact. Freud, in the work of Sigmund Freud, the Austrian neurologist who founded psychoanalysis, the most consistent aspect of his views on gender is his associating activity with masculinity and passivity with femininity. However, although he harks back to Aristotle on sex difference, he separates masculinity and femininity from anatomical sex. In Freud's view, every biological male has passive impulses and every biological female has active impulses. And the distribution of these impulses depends on life events and cultural context. This relatively enlightened position runs against Freud's theory of castration anxiety, which in terms of the psychic trajectories of both men and women ascribes tremendous value to the position of male organ. Freud has been both critiqued and celebrated by feminists. Influential contemporary feminist philosophers who celebrated Freud include Luz, Erika Rao, and Helene Sokos. They overcome the problem of castration anxiety by drawing on Lacan's ways of interpreting Freud. In his celebrated essay, The Signification of the Phallus, Lacan takes what Freud calls castration as an unavoidable condition for entering into culture, what Lacan calls a symbolic. The phallus for, Lacan is not the human male organ, but rather the sign for that non-existent thing that would overcome the alienation that accompanies submission to various cultural constraints. So for Lacan, every functioning social subject is castrated. Wittgenstein, the Austrian-British thinker who was one of the giants of early 20th century philosophy, said little about women in his published philosophical writings. His biographer reports that Wittgenstein did make a number of derogatory comments about women in personal conversations, expressing opposition to women's suffrage on the grounds that women are stupid, and exclaiming, after all but one of the women in a class he was teaching at Cambridge had left the lecture hall. Thank God we have got rid of women. At that time, he just exclaimed. So analytical philosophy and the philosopher in this philosophy school, we have this tradition which developed and became professionalized in the United Kingdom and the United States, also narrowed their vision. Overwhelmingly, men, such philosophers stopped mentioning women and gender almost altogether, as their attention turned to question of metaphysics, epistemology, and language. Certain trends emerged in this period. On one hand, some held views of women's nature as fundamentally embodied and in particular tied to their reproductive function. Proponents of these views held women to be governed by their emotions and considered it appropriate for them to be active only in the private sphere as opposed to men as spiritual and intellectual, men as governed by reason and men as properly active in the public sphere. Often, but not always, such conceptions of women entail a view of emotions, bodies, reproduction, and private life as inferior to reason, intellect, and public life. Women were thus considered to be inferior to men and properly subordinated to them both in society at large and within the family. And there are so many other views, and especially I would like to quote some of other views of the philosophers whom I have mentioned already. For example, Nietzsche. He has crossed all the standards when he says women have so much cause for shame. In women, there is so much pedantry, superficiality, schoolmasterliness, petty presumption, unbridledness, and indiscretion conceit, which has really been best restrained and dominated hereto by the fear of man. He says this in Beyond Good and Evil, as already we have mentioned about that. And he says we should think of women as property, as the Orientals do. And then we find that most enlightened thinkers had to say very little about the position of women held in society, and many of their followers assume that the concepts of liberty, equality, and political representation applied only to men. John Stuart Mill's espousal of gender equality in the 19th century, the subjugation in his book, Subjugation of Women, published in 1869, was a play for equal status for women in the areas of education, employment, and political rights to vote. Bertrand Russell has also made it very clear that women and men cannot be given same education, as the roles of both differ in the society. He says, for example, but the whole educational problem where women are concerned has been distorted by the desire for sex equality. There has been an attempt to acquire the same education as that given to boys, even where it was by no means good in itself. Consequently, women educators have aimed at giving to their girls such useless knowledge as is given to boys of the same class, and have been bitter opponents of the notion that some part of female education should be a technical training for motherhood, unquote. He advocated the theory that may not be very much liked by the westernized intellectuals and the feminists who are bent on equality of everything between men and women. When he says, and he sees that we need to just have a different educational curricula for women and men. Western views in this way, and philosophers from beginning to present time, we have mentioned their views, and in the same way, the position of women has not improved in this way in the Western part also. And despite the orchestrated propaganda about the freedom of women and the abundance of feminist movements, which are spreading their circles throughout the world and spending enormous amount of money for bettering the image of you. When we take historical view of the situation, we come to know that in the early 19th century, the legal existence of the wife was suspended during marriage. That is, the husband and wife were deemed to be one person, a husband. Enactment of the Married Women's Property Acts in the mid-19th century, as well as later reform, provided a wife with legal rights from which she was previously barred, including the right to own property, dispose her property, or sue or be sued, sign contract in her name, and execute a deed according to her will. The women were supposed to have been created for to feel rather than to reason. Rousseau was opposed to the idea of providing women with the same education as to men. And it was for that reason that Wallenstein Prof had depicted the picture of the pathetic situation of the affairs of women during the 18th century in the following words. She says, civilized women are so weakened by false refinement that respecting morals, their conscience is much below what would be were they left in the state nearer to nature. She held that women, like men, were naturally rational, but their inferior education often taught them to be silly and emotional. Education, she believes, should cultivate the natural reasoning capacity in girls. In the early 19th century, the vast majority of women throughout the Europe and the United States still had no legal identity apart from their husbands. She could not own property on her name. Both white women and African Americans were regarded as intellectually inferior and denied access to a decent education. And American social reformist Elizabeth Cady Stanton addressed the New York State legislature on February 1860, while comparing the women with the black African Americans who were being discriminated because of their color. She laments that the women are worse sufferers than the blacks because of their sex. She says the Negro skin and the women's sex are both prima facie evidence that they were intended to be in subjugation to the white Saxon man. She says further, terrible are the penalties we are now suffering for the ages of injustice done to women. Undo what man did for us in the dark ages and strike all legislation, unquote, which has been made for women by him. She exhorts women to do so. She complains of the, quote, listless inactivity, unquote, and, quote, to enable men to acquire the noble privilege of reason, stupid acquiescence, while as the woman had to remain in the dust, never to rise again. According to her, the women were supposed to have been created to feel rather than reason, and, quote, their charms and weakness must obtain that all the power they obtain, or in other words, they are just sweet flowers that smile in the way of man, unquote. Rousseau had cautioned in a different manner about the education of women when he said, educate women like men, and the more they resemble our sex, the less power will they have over us. So this is something which I have just mentioned, and so far as the women's status in the views of philosophers is concerned, and if you allow, then I can just talk about some other issues. And there I have just I had given some pictures also, and how the women's movement has taken place in the Western context, and why it has been not that strong in the Eastern context, because here religion was very active, and religion had given women rights, although those rights were sometimes denied to the women. But in Western context, women were in a very bad condition, and they were not even allowed to attend public life, and they have so many restrictions, and even the philosophers could not do any justice to their problems of women and their rights. And most of the philosophers had just such negative views about women, and women were given rights, suffrage in 1890 to 60s. The civil rights movement gained ground when African Americans struggled to achieve racial equality. Women were inspired to relieve their struggle for equality at that time. So even there, they had no rights for voting. The more the necessity of knowledge is understood, the more intelligent women will feel attracted to motherhood. It was mentioned by Russell even. At present, many highly qualified women despise it, thinking that it does not give scope for the exercise of their intellectual faculties. This is a great misfortune, says Russell, since they are capable of being the best mothers if their thoughts were turned in that direction. However, at the same time, Russell strikes an important note of reminder when he says that the worst feature of the Christian religion, however, is its attitude towards sex, an attitude so morbid and so unnatural that it can be understood only when taken in relation to sickness of the civilized world at the time when Roman Empire was decaying. We sometimes hear talk to the effect that Christianity improved the condition of women. This is one of the grossest perversions of history that is possible to make. Monks have always regarded women primarily as the temptress. They have thought of her mainly as the inspirer of impure lusts, unquote, says Russell. So you can see this was the condition of women. Russell goes further and maintains that it is the claim of women to equality with men that has done most to make a new system necessary in the world today. Equality can be secured in two ways, either by exacting from men the same strict monogamy as was in the past exacted from women, or by allowing women equally with men a certain relaxation of the traditional code. The first of these ways was preferred by most of the pioneers of women's rights and is still preferred by the churches. But the second has many more adherents in practice, although most of them are in doubt as to the theoretical justifiability of their own behavior. And those who recognize that some new ethics is required find it difficult to know just what its precepts should be, says Russell. So this was something about women as has been depicted by the philosophers and the immediate reaction against these views by Wollstonecraft and Stanton and others. But so far as the philosophy of feminism is concerned, in the next lecture, I will be definitely just throwing much light on that, and that needs more elaboration because that has many facets, and that is needed in order to understand what had been the role of religion and philosophy in elevating or dwindling the status of women. And in this way, we can compare all the contributions made by philosophy, religion, and feminism to improve the states of women and empower women. And in a critical manner and in a critical manner, we can just assess the roles of all the three separately. And that will be the best way rather than just discarding religion or discarding philosophy and just saying that it is because of religion that women were subjugated or it is because of some other reasons. So in this way, we need to make an objective study of all these factors and without a biased approach, but rather than with an unclouded mind, so that the actual question about the woman, which is one half of the humanity, that is the status of woman is established, and we can see what philosophy has just contributed and what religion has done, and we can have a dispassionate and a very critical view of all these views in order to give women their rights and the status which they deserve as human beings and the creation of God. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much, Professor Marazi, for your very thought-provoking and comprehensive analysis. And you have tried to give an objective study on the perception of philosophy on women, their nature, sex, and problems. And you have focused different perspective of Greek philosophers, English philosophers, German philosophers, and French philosophers. That is on women's nature, women's issue, in regarding to decision making, understanding, rationality, critical thinking, and so many issues that you have discussed. You have also taken, you have also talked up to the epistemological and metaphysical issues related to feministic stance. But today, you have not taken Indian perspective or the perception of Indian philosophers on feministic issue. If you had taken the Indian perspective, then your discussion would be more comprehensive. Okay, thanks so much, sir. They may request Professor Dr. K. Rao to carry on the discussion.
Yeah, before we start discussion, just I had said it earlier that we need to have a separate discussion on religions and women, and then I will take Indian perspective, Islamic perspective, and Christian and Jewish perspective, and then we
Okay,
can discuss.
okay. Thanks, sir, Dr. Rao.
Namaskar, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Maharana, and I thank Professor Marazi for his nice lecture. As Professor Marazi has said, that this lecture will have a series, over a period of another 2-3 lectures, where he will take various other aspects. So, listening to what he has said, we have with us Professor Ranjit Ghosh, Avinash Srivastav, Alok Tandon sir, and others. To start with, I could find Avinash sir and Ranjit Ghosh sir. To start with, whom to take? Let us call Avinash Srivastav sir to have his observations first. Well, Avinash,
thank you, sir. Let me first congratulate Professor Hamid for his wonderful speech, where he has tried to depict the male chauvinistic view of the West against the woman. And it is a fact that up to the 19th century, the first half of the 19th century, the women were treated in the West as a second-grade citizen. And I exactly recall one incident that in America, a woman was denied to argue in the court because she is a woman and she doesn't have the right of doing so. In China, very late, the women have got the right, otherwise they were treated like an animal. So this is the male chauvinistic attitude that has been focused by the Westerners, and this is the basic reason that they never take in the consideration the cry of women, the feelings of the woman, and they are being absent, and they have seen in a derogatory way. And this is the basic fact that the feministic movement has emerged in the West, because later on the women became very sensitive when they found themselves absent in the mainstream of the society, and they feel that they are being looked out. It is a fact that the lecture was so exhaustive that there is no scope for other religion and other tradition to be taken up, because I too have written on feministic movement in India as well, how this feminism emerged from the very beginning. But this is again a fact that this sort of male chauvinistic view, women were belated by men almost everywhere, but this is found mostly in the Western countries. And you have rightly observed, sir, barring few exceptions of the past, that the woman has given some sentiments that they nurture the family and all these things. Their entire work has been ignored. They have not been looked and they have not been properly observed in the if for the woman itself, and their role has been denied, rather ignored by the thinkers of the West. And that's why I am of the opinion that this movement, the cry of the woman, started from the West itself, and they have later on emerged. As you have seen, there's so many female philosophers have emerged in the West that need to be concluded in the last, because Simone de Beauvoir and so many women philosophers have come up to cry and to rather oppose this man chauvinistic attitude in the West. This has to be concluded in your paper, sir. This had to be included in your paper. Thank you very much, sir, for your nice deliberation and very informative paper. Thank you once again.
So, sir, just I wanted to say that, in the next lecture, I will be taking the feminist philosophers like Simone de Beauvoir and Wolfman and so many others. And I will just start from Wollstonecraft, Stonecraft and others, and all their views, philosophical views about women and the rights of women in states that I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Srivastava sir and Professor Marazi. Well, Roma, well, we have with us. Yes, Roma, madam, want to say something, madam? Well, some network issue. Well, in the meantime, let us welcome Dr. Ranjit Gupta. He's with us.
Good evening, doctor.
Well, madam. Yes, continue. Yes, madam.
I mean, I always knew that the women had a very tough time coming to be as of today. What with the, bearing a female child, and what with sati, and what with everything else. But listening to Marazi Sahab, really my respect has gone up, because, the way he has told us all the details. I mean, imagine people calling us fickle-minded, not aware of, not intelligent enough to understand moral indications. I mean, what kind of male chauvinism was existing then? I'm sorry to say. But yes, it has been a tough fight. But being myself, understanding the strength of the women, I mean, even the very creation would not have been possible without a woman. Without the mother, creation itself would not have been. And why should people be running us down like this? I hope the philosophers of today and of the future will definitely, add more color and life to the existence of the women. But thank you, Marazi Sahab. It's always a pleasure hearing you. And of course, all the friends who have heard you today. We'll wait for the second issue when you will talk about religion and the philosophy of feminism. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. So just before other questions or comments are made, I just was trying to give the details of the philosophical views so that I may analyze those and criticize those, and then pave way for a new approach to the issues of women, which has been presented by feminists, and what can be the religious role in elevating the status of women, and how religion have played an important role in elevating the states of women, and what have been the negativities. Both I will discuss, inshallah, in the lectures in future, if I am allowed by the...
Inshallah. Thank you. Thank you, Professor sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Roma madam and Professor Marazi. Now let's move to Dr. Ranjit Ghosh sir. He is with us. Well, Dr. Ghosh, please, your observations and questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, clear, sir.
So we are thankful to Professor Marazi for his relating these three different domains, feminism, religion, and philosophy. He has tried his best to give us a relationship, in fact, between equality, faith, and reason. So these three things belong to these three domains: feminism, religion, and philosophy. Now, what happens? Mostly, religion acts as a tool in the hands of the patriarchal society, hence is an impediment to gender equality. Feminism, like Marxism, is against religion, which is conservative in nature. Religion is always conservative. Now, what we have to check that what role does religion play in the 21st century to maintain the equality of the sexes. This is most important because till the end of the 20th century, and there was no gender equality in the sense so far as religious rituals are concerned. Absolutely, there was no gender equality. Then coming to the Indian society, what we find that Indian society is stratified both vertically and horizontally. And religion plays a notorious role in aggravating this situation. This is the case with Indian society. Because you see, religion challenges the reproductive rights and abortion rights, which comes under the rights of a woman. So, take the case of in the Indian context. What is the aim of marriage? It is said in the Vedas, and we putrarthe kriyate bharja. That means you marry because you want a son to procure a son, and your lineage will continue. So this type of situation doesn't exist in the present day society, because the society is changed, and this sort of ritualistic impediments actually creating problem rather than bringing any solution to this. Okay. Now, another thing in this context, I would request Professor Marazi to think over this matter, that there is a domain like feminist theology. And here we find in Hinduism and in Sikhism, in Buddhism, they are claiming that they have developed a type of feminist theology. But others, the writers on this, they are silent about the Christianity and Islam. So what is the status of this feminist theology? And if Professor Marazi can enlighten us, that will be better. Thank you. Thank you.
Very much, sir. So your review and your observations and remarks are always very insightful and and encouraging, and also thought-provoking always. So we always wait for your reactions. That is very important for us, because you have just become like our teacher of all of us. So whatever you said, sir, it was you're right. As so far as a case of a woman has been there, there have been a lot of negativity against women, whether it was in the East or the West. So I have done a little bit comparative study of the subject, and I have been teaching this subject for almost 25 years in the Kashmir University and other universities also. And I have delivered several lectures and written many articles and books on the subject. So I am very much clear about this. So I have done a comparative study of religion so far as women's studies is concerned. But we have to qualify. There are some, religious, teachings where woman is elevated to the status of, I should say, divinity. But there are some such type of precepts also where woman has been denigrated, no doubt in that. As you mentioned, some of the, as have been mentioned by Madam Rumavani also, that there have been several practices which are challenging the status of women and disempowering women and denigrating their, role in the society. But so far as, a student of comparative religion, I do think that religions have that much injustice to women as philosophies have done, or philosophers have done. I have mentioned some of the philosophers, and they are just saying such, obnoxious things about women, And so sometimes we feel horrified even to quote those sayings, statements. And so far as religion is concerned, I am talking about all the religions. So you mentioned about Aryan religions or Indic religions, and I have taught these religions for so many years in our universities. And so far as Islam and other religions like Christianity and Judaism concerned, so woman has been given a very, very lofty status. And it has been said, women are the counterparts of men. And where our Quran has used the term of man, woman has been also used. So it has been said, Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min zakarin wa unsa وجعلنا شعوبا وقبائل وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. O people of the world, we have created you from the pair of man and woman, and we have made you into clans and tribes so that you may recognize each other. And best among us is such a person, whether man or woman, who is pious and who is more God-fearing. And there is no difference in this way for the spiritual states of women. They are equal in that way. And secondly, it has been said by the Prophet that women, the best asset of the world is a pious woman. And it has been said that in Quran, Surah Nahl, that whether man or woman, whether men or women, if they are doing good actions, we will make them to live a very successful and chaste life in this world. So in this way, no difference has been made. And if you see sometimes, because Islam is most misrepresented and I should say, quoted religion. Because I feel that nowadays how such things are being separated about Islam, which have no basis at all. But people are not doing objective studies. But if you do objective studies, we'll find that Islam has elevated the status of women, that even Umar, the second caliph of Islam, had to tell Prophet Sallallahu, now women don't accept anything from us. They don't care for us. They have given them that much status. And women could stood before Prophet and ask a question in presence of so many people. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if the women want to go to the masjid, you cannot stop them. And the Prophet said, they are the handmaids of God. They are the handmaids of God. You can't stop them from going to the masjid or the mosque. And they have every right to go there. And they used to attend every function, social function during the time of Prophet ﷺ. And I always say it, Islam had given women all the rights, but Muslims have snatched it off. I say it. Islam had given women all the Muslims have snatched off. So this is the fault of the people. They are not following their religion. Rather, as you said rightly, that religion is being used as a means to exploit sometimes women and the oppressed and others and marginalized communities. So we need to just have that understanding of objective understanding, because West is just starting. West is just starting Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, everything, under the notions of atheism, agnosticism, thisism and thatism. But as a Muslim, as a Hindu, as a Christian, as a Buddhist, we need to try to just do research on our own scriptures and come out with the actual and real representation of our religions without any bias. Objectively and analytically, we should analyze that, and we need to present that picture before the world, because a lot of distortions are taking place without knowledge. A lot of propaganda has been made so far. And you know what is happening nowadays, and how even the sacred personalities of religions are being denigrated and they are being ridiculed, vilified, and that is not allowed in Islam at all. We can never vilify anyone's God or whatever they are worshipping as, or they are respecting. We have to respect them all, because they are venerated. People venerate them. So we should take care of the sensibilities of people. But West does not care for that. And because they are under the notion of this atheism, agnosticism, and freedom of will and libertine philosophies, and that they do care for the sentiments and the feelings of the people. But so far as we are concerned, as I said, so far Islam is concerned, a lot of teachings are found in Quran and Sunnah and the history of Islam, where women have been given great status, and they could be rulers. For example, we had Asha, the wife of Prophet Muhammad. She was the judge during the time of Abu Bakr and Umar and Usman Ghani. During the three caliphates, she was the judge, and people used to go to her to ask her about religious matters. And Prophet had asked Muslims that you should ask this woman about your religion. She lived after Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu for 50 years. And she was the teacher of the teachers. And her role was, and she has narrated so many traditions of the Prophet Sallallahu. And even she rode on a camel. And she could ride on a camel, and it was not prohibited, and they could go to anywhere, and they were free to do this, and they could attend congregations, they could attend the injured, and they could serve in different capacities. So this is needed, and if we present this picture before the world, for example, what is the position of women in Hinduism? There have been great Hindu women. They have played a very important role in the history, and we need to present their picture before the world, because West has no knowledge about actual picture of our religions, let me tell you. And we are accepting whatever comes from their propaganda, disinformation. So for the reason I feel that let us have a dispassionate study of all these subjects, whether it is Hinduism, it is Buddhism, it is Christianity, it is Islam, it is Judaism, whatever. And this will give us a confidence to stand on, and that was done by Gandhi, that was done by earlier scholars, Aurobindo Ghosh, and that was done by Iqbal, and that was done by Azad, and the people who were men of substance, and they were knowing their religion. They were not feeling inferior before they were West. Rather, they went there and then they told them what, for example, I was just reading Hinduism, a Universal Religion by Vivekananda, how he went to the Parliament of the Religions in 1893, and how he delivered the lecture there, Hinduism, a Universal Religion. And he was having that confidence. And in Iqbal also, when he went to the West for studies, and he just came back from there, and then he propounded the actual message of Islam. And he said that if anyone can give women protection, that is men. Men have to take care of women, and they have not to denigrate women. And in this way, he says that West has just denuded women from her all, respect and all her reverence. The West has lost the sense of the purity of women, and they have not done justice to women. Iqbal has said it. And then he says that haya nahi hai zamane ki aankh mein baki, khuda kare ki rahe tera shabab bedar. And he says about that. So what has happened to modern times because of the Western philosophy? And then Akbar Labadi has also said, बेपर्दा चंद नजर आई बीवियां, अकबर कह रहे थे कुर्मी से जमीन में गिर गया, पूछा वो आपका पर्दा क्या हुआ, कहने लगी कि मर्द की अकल पे मर्दों के पड़ गया. So women have become that much rebellious because of this Western I should say waywardness. They have separate such education where there is no concern for family life and other things, and people have not taken the positive values from the West. We are only taking the cultural aspects from the West, not scientific, technological, and that has just made our society also vulnerable. And now you see what is the breakage of our family system, values of family, and other such type of domestic life is in a very jeopardy. So in this way, if we discover our own religions, like Divine of Aurobindo Ghosh, and see, and our Iqbal and Azad and other scholars from Hinduism, Buddhism, and other Jainism, even and Sikhism also, great people have come. And we need to present the Eastern and Oriental perspective also before the world. Why we are always be governed by the Western perspective about everything? I have always been advocating this. Let us present our viewpoint also before the world. We have to also contribute something. We should not be always at the receiving end. Let us present our picture before the world rather than make them, as has been said by Edward Said in his Orientalism. So we are being depicted and represented by the Orientalists. Why not represent ourselves on our own? So this has been my way that I always do comparative study of religions, and then compare with philosophy, compare with other systems of thought, and then come out with my own understanding about different things. And that needs a fresh look. So that we can be also living with an identity which is of our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Marazi. The thing is just I want to say that when we are trying to bring the religious understanding, then we have to, so far as the right to equality of the sexes is concerned, we have to take certain issues. Those issues have to be studied, like this reproductive rights and the right to abortion, all these things, this type of issues. So these issues are to be discussed in all the religions, so that it can make any sense whether there is a possibility of the religious, feminist theology. That is whether the possibility of feminist theology.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
So, thank you. You have-
just one thing I would like to mention, that in every religion there is a foul and fine things about the woman. It is our duty to see the finest part of the woman, because women are made up in every religion. They are having the sentiment, emotions, and they are the maker of the not only the house but also the society as well, because it is they groom the children in a better way, and they give the finest of our ideas so that they may build their character for a good man, as a good citizen. And everywhere you will find, just in Manu Smriti it is said, Pita rakshati kaumare, bharta rakshati yavane, rakshante sthivira putra sthiti swatantra namarhasi. In the same way, in the Islam, you will find Surah Nisa. So, what happens with us? We just concentrate our mind on the fourth aspect of the woman, which is written in the religion. It is also our duty, as Professor Hamid sir has spotlight so many nice and sublime aspect of the Quran, which is depicted there about the women and the fair sex. And in the same way, if you happen to read the Hinduism, in the same Manusmriti it is said, Yatra Naryastu Pujyante Ramante Tatra Devata. And secondly, here also, like Islam, we also says she is our Ardhangani, she is the better half. It is said. So both have got the same equal status, and in each and every religion you will find the same thing. But there are certain things are there where we normally the patriarchal point of view or the male chauvinism has painted these things in the darkest of the color, and that's why we have been prejudiced against all these things. It is our duty to see the things in minute detail, as our Professor Hamid has observed the things in a nice way. So it is our also duty to see the thing in what context it has been said, because with the change of time, thought also emerges and changes as well. With the context, the situation changes also. In what context thing has been said, and in what context the another thing has been said. If you happen to see the Buddhism, 8 Guru Dhammas are there, but I say always that it is Buddhism that has given a boost to the feminist movement in India for the first time in the history of the world, because when King Prasenjit had a girl child and he started weeping, Buddha was there, and he says, she is the brightest element of the universe. It is woman who can shape the nation, who can shape the society, who can shape the family. They have tendered, and we should not weep for that. Rather, we have the nice feeling for them. You must be happy that you are having a girl child. So in every religion, you will find the same thing. And 8 Guru Dhammas, if you happen to see, you will say that it is again a male-dominated vision there. So in all religions, the fine things are there and some foul things are there. Thank you very much, sir, for your nice deliberation.
So there's one point now I just forgot to mention about that. So far as Professor Ranjit Ghosh Saab's question was concerned, it's like, feminist theology in Islam. So we have a feminist group of Muslims, like Amna Wadud is there, Asma Barla is there, Atma Marnisi is there, and then there are other scholars. And I had a good opportunity of meeting Amna Wadud twice. Once in Kashmir and second time in Indonesia. So she has written on Islamic feminism, and there are so many Arab feminists as well, and they have been supporting this theology, Islamic theology, and they say we can solve the problems of women within Islamic context, and we can also live the highest standards of women liberation so far as liberation is concerned. And in this way, there is this thought which has developed. Although I feel that feminism was more relevant to the West, because as I mentioned about the philosophy, and when I will be talking about the religions, as some of that I have mentioned in the words of Bertrand Russell, then you will find that there was need of this feminism. But so far as East is concerned, it did not emerge as a movement. Although there was impact from the feminist thought on our some groups here in the Indian subcontinent. But so far as the movement is concerned, there was no need like that because religion was very strong and women were not in that bad condition so far. Although at some places, religion has been misused by many people, as we can see. But so far as a movement of like feminist movement, that did not emerge in the East because there was not that much exploitation or negative approach towards women as temptress. And she is the responsible for man's agony and man's fall, as has been said, as and mentioned by Bertrand Russell also. So that's a very important point. And I am reminded after listening a very nice comments by Professor Avinash Srivastava that women, it has been said by Professor Aslam, if a person has 2-3 daughters, so those will be, and he will give them the best education and will bring them up. These will become shield for him from the hellfire on the day of judgment. Then the people asked, oh, Professor Aslam, if a person has only 2 daughters, he said if he just brings them up and takes care of them, these will become shield for him on the day of judgment from the hellfire. So such has been the encouragement to just to take care of the girl childs and not abuse them. And they have been given share in the property of father, property of husband, property of children, and they have no economic responsibilities. All their responsibilities are to be taken, shouldered by their husbands. And a person is only allowed to marry when he can, fulfill the responsibility or economic and other responsibility of the woman. If a woman earns, whatever she is earning, that belongs to her, and her husband has no, right on the earnings of his wife. And if she can even give some money as a debt to her husband, and then she can, demand that back. So in this way, a lot of rights have been given to women. And as you said, as Professor Avinaji has also said, so we need to discover the teachings in our own our traditions and come out with the positive aspects of religion so that the condition of women is improved, because the condition of women is not improved in our societies as well. Lot of domestic violence is taking place and dowry deaths are taking place with every passing day. Lot of rapes are taking place and violence against women is very rampant in all our sections of society, despite the good teaching is found in our scriptures and in our traditions. So we need to live those traditions and practically rather than just mention that we have this and we have that, because the condition of women is not very, I should say, satisfactory this time. So there are other people also, I find some, especially Sayyid Amin Saab, Bukhari Saab is there. And then there is Professor Krishnamurti is there, and other people out there. We would like to listen from them also if they have some comments or questions, so that we could end it. Then we can just take this discussion to a logical conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Well, taking from Ranjit Ghosh, sir, Avinash, sir, and the responses. Well, taking from Dr. Ghosh, well, what you said that feminism is concerned about bringing about equality of women with men, and he said religion is lastly concerned with faith, and philosophy is concerned with reason. So we have 3 people here: feminists, the religious men, and the philosophers of religion. So the feminists would be better placed knocking the doors of philosophers of religion rather than knocking at the doors of the religious men. If they want justice, so move to the philosophers of religion and not the so-called religious men. And that would be a nice move. That would be a nice move for the feminists to knock at the philosophers, not at the religious men. So thank you, Professor Marazi. We have with us Dr. Alok Tandon, sir. Well, sir, please, your observations, sir. Dr. Tandon. Yes, sir. Welcome, sir. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar, Professor Rao. Though I could not concentrate fully, but I must thank Professor Maraji for giving 2 lectures today. First one was his very laborious historical review of Western thought or Western philosophers' views on women, and I think that can be a good chapter on any book on the subject. And the second was his response, and I think that was more important, more natural, more spontaneous. His own take on religion and feminism, which was not the subject of discussion or presentation today. For me, I would only ask a few questions. First one is that though you have not talked about some existential philosophers and all these people, Sartre and etc., I don't know, but the thing is, the question is why these philosophers, why these Western philosophers could not think about the equality, the dignity, and the freedom of women. Was it inherent in Western thought or Western philosophy, or it was just due to the living in a patriarchal society, or it was because of the prejudices inculcated by them due to their religions, especially Christianity, which was more prevalent in their times, or other religions? Because in Greek thought, you have to find out. So I find that this type of analytical discussion was missing. And just to say that Western philosophers were very much prejudiced against women. So Avinash ji, Ranjit ji, and all others have also cited that Manu Smith and all these texts have not been very fair to women. My point is different. My point is, when you talk about objectively looking at the situation of women, we should not go only by the philosophers of religion. We should also think about the sociologists of religion. We should also think about the real societies, the status of women in ancient India, in medieval India, in present day India. And in the same way, when we talk about Islam, we should also look into the status of women in Afghanistan, in Middle East, in Pakistan, and other parts of the world. So this mismatch between the real status of women in society throughout the world, throughout history, I'm not singling out any religion or philosophy, and the sanitized view propagated by the Hindus, Muslims, Christians, the philosophers of religion, the theologists of religion, that needs to be questioned, and that has been questioned by the feminists, and that they found that all this has become outdated. When we talk about the emergence of feminism in the West, we should also think about the emergence of modernity in the West. The ideals, the values of modernity, equality, fraternity, and freedom, they are the result of the Enlightenment. And all these societies, including Indian as well as Islamic societies, they lacked it. They could not develop that type of scientific rationality which gave a proper base for all these ideals and for the feminist movement. So just to decry that we did not require feminist movement in India, we had the most sublime status given to Indian women. See how Indian women have fought, and still they are fighting. And you yourself said the rape, the dowry, and the low status, the family, everything is to be seen in the position of the Dalit woman. So the actual state of affairs calls for a feminist movement, a sociological feminist movement, and the thoughts of the great sublime and sanitized religions has got no value in that. So I thank Professor Maraji. I was expecting his second lecture on religion, but he came out with a defense of Islam. But I think the same type of defense I have been hearing from Hindus, from Christians, but they look into the actual state of affairs in this society historically. And today, we find that religion has not been conducive to the liberation of women, as Professor Ranjit Ghosh has said. And I must say that Professor Maraji must come out with his next lecture in which he must talk about the feminism and religion. And then we can discuss it at length. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No, I remember that I have met you once, perhaps in JNU or somewhere else. So it was nice meeting again. Mashallah, whatever you said, it has substance. And basically, I had just talked about other philosophers also, not only philosophers of religion. I have talked about Marx, I have talked about Bertrand Russell, and I have talked about Nietzsche and others as well. And I also promised that we'll be talking about the feminist philosophers and what are their views and their theories about women empowerment. But I have a little bit, I just have my own take on the subject. As I have been teaching religions and philosophies both for last about 30 years, and I have just come to this realization that so far as the pompous slogans of freedom of women in the West are concerned, I have been West many times, I have been to USA, that is not there. There are a lot of problems women are facing. So they have been not liberated as we feel that they have been liberated from all their agonies. I was there in this Seneca Falls a few years back. And then I went also Swissons, that place memorial. And I was told by friends there in USA that we have a lot of problems for women, and women told me about that. So in this way, everything is not so, I should say, goody-goody there. So they have also their problems, and they have been not liberated at all. And so far as our religions are concerned, we can have our critical views about religion, but the positive points and positive contributions of the religions which are there in any religion, I do say, because a lot of misinformation, disinformation is taking place. And without any substantial reasons, people are just generalizing. Maybe because of some tribal reasons or some regional reasons, people are doing something wrong, or ignorance. So, but that can't be attributed to the actual religious teaching. So we need to see what is the root of that. So far as your first question was concerned, that was very important. Why in the West these philosophers have been denigrating women? So I feel that, as you said yourself, that it has been my perception that basically there is some role of religion also behind that, because the viewpoint that the Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil on the instance of his wife, that is Eve, and she has been considered to be the temptress. And when you think that woman is temptress and man is in this world because of the sin which was committed by Adam on the instance of his wife, so definitely you feel always that woman is responsible for all our problems. And it has been mentioned in so many, religious statements in the biblical literature. So there I will discuss inshallah in next lecture. But we have to be critical about our own negative aspects which we have been developed by people. But what is the actual teaching of this religion? That also needs to be analyzed, rather than just saying that it is laughing it out of the court. Because as we substantially study these religions, there are some very, very substantial teachings which can improve the condition of women. And what people are doing with their religion, so a lot of problems are there, aberrations are taking place here and there, whether in Muslim societies, whether in other societies also, that you are right. So they are not following their actual religion, they are following their tribal codes, and that is attributed to religion. That's very bad. And the people who know actual religion, they should come out, they should not, this is not religion, this is very wrong, you should not do this. But the problem is that people are taking every propaganda as the actual reality about any religion which has been spread by various, I should say, unscrupulous elements. They have their own interest in that. And this religion is being politicized. And these all issues are being politicized. And that's very bad. We need to take care of women, whether they are belonging to any religion or any society, whether they are believers or non-believers, but they are suffering. So let us try to help them. If religion comes to their rescue, okay. If we can get some good insights from anywhere, let noble thoughts come from all sides, as has been said, in the Rig Veda. As Prophet Muhammad said, that the word of wisdom is the lost property of a believer. Wherever he gets it, he should pick it up. So we should take good ideas from anywhere. The feminists have also done something good. Why not to accept that? So basic point is that we need to take the steps which can help women and get her status and give her the glory and the respect which she deserves. Wherever we can get those positive thoughts, because when we saw philosophy, in philosophy we have a lot of problems. And they have created more problems than they have solved, as I have mentioned. And then we can look towards religion and see what religion may help us somewhere. If there is some problem with religion, let us just try to not reform that and try to come out with a real interpretation, as has been done by many people. And if there is something which is very negative, let us reform that, try to remove that. And that is our responsibility as philosophers, as citizens, and as the conscientious persons of the society, as intellectual. But you are right. We need to discuss all these issues in an analytical, critical manner and philosophical manner. And inshallah, I will be doing that in further lectures. Today it was just introduction. And I just asked the organizers if they allow me to deliver 2 more lectures on the subject. One will be exclusively confined to feminist philosophy, and second will be on the religions, Indic as well as Semitic. And Islam and other religions. So, and positive, negative things, and we can discuss those things thirdware, and questions can be asked, and then a critical analysis and the assessment of the subject can be taken. But I am so thankful to your kind self, sir, that you have mentioned some very, very pertinent and very, very positive thoughts, and we are enlightened by your views. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Marazi. Actually, the problem is also conceptual. When we look at religion only in terms of philosophical doctrine or faith or some text, then we just ignore how it is being practiced. So the other parts of religion, the institutions, the power relations among the preachers, the relation of religious society with the political power structure of that time, and the patriarchy as well. These are ignored. And because of that, this whole business of giving some very sanitized, very pious, very positive interpretation of religion takes us nowhere. Because what we practice, what we preach, we cannot practice. That is the thing. So I think this contradiction, I think you must look into. That's why I always say to all my philosophy friends that don't go only by the philosophy of religion. Just try to look into the sociology of religion also. There are some manifest functions of religion, but there are many latent functions of religion. And for that, we are suffering. Religion is also has got an identity function. It has also got a basis for community function. And in these 2 functions, it can lead to a lot of destruction, violence, and what religions have preached and how they have fought violently among the religious societies, religious supporters fought among themselves against others, and a lot of violence had taken place in history that can be called the religious violence. So we need to be very, very cautious about when we are dealing with religion in this 21st century, because religion has got a very, very, very complex relationship they have developed with politics, the state, the power, and that is not a very liberating affair. And for that, when you say that in the West, women are not liberated, liberation of human being is still a dream, whether it is man or women. Nobody can say that human society or human beings are liberated. Unless women are liberated, men cannot get liberation. That is also there. So I think you are doing a lot of work on this field, doing a lot of research on this field. You have got your own take on it. You are soft to Islam, but I think there are many issues which are to be looked into. And I think you must be fair and you must come out with some good positive and good reflections in next lecture. We will wait for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your observations.
Thank you, Professor Marazi, for your response, and thanks to Dr. Tandon for the newness in his approach, as always. Okay, sir's Dr. Tandon's recommendation for a sociology of religion is highly appreciable, because looking at the actual state of affairs, we need to film out what can be done that would really benefit women. That's the need of the day, and that would support all the feminists, the thinkers, and all those who are concerned about the liberation of men. As you said, that men cannot be liberated without the liberation of women. So there is a great need of a sociology of religion this day, and that's right, and rightly said by Dr. Tandon. And well, it's the real move that we should go for a sociology of religion, taking into account the real state of affairs that we live in, and the support that we have from the text. That is all right. And as Dr. Tandon says, there is a lot of gap between what is preached in the text and what is actually is practiced. So the gap that is there between the actual teachings and the real practice, and that gap has to be filled in, and what has to be done. So that is the move that we as well-wishers of women, as thinkers, taking into the for the betterment, talking of the betterment of women. This gap needs to be bridged, and it's only then the religious texts do really get justice, and women do get justice. Thank you, Dr. Tandon, for your praiseworthy approach, your recommendation for a sociology of religion, and also thank Dr. Professor Marazi. He has taken this positively, and he has said that he will be coming with the next lecture on this. Okay, so it's a real good going, and we'll wait for Professor Marazi for his next lecture on this. Well, a very good question has been asked. Well, we'll go to Dr. Amita Valmiki, because he is a feminist and she works on that. But before that, a very good question has been raised in the chat box by Sravani Mishra Madam. She says that we are all human beings, may it be male or female, we are all human beings. But why this discrimination? Number one. Number two, she says that in the society where we live, somehow, and the strengths are somehow subjugated. So this is another challenge that we need to take. Okay, so this is another area where we can really think on, and we can discuss. And discussion is not that important. The real practice, why this discrimination, and what should be done that the strengths that women have, that has to be projected, because the strengths are somehow they are neglected, and the weaknesses are projected, and that brings in women to say, puts women to put in a backstep. So that is the problem with women. That is a great concern that we see in Sravani Mishra Madam. Well, I think Professor Marazi will also think of this and come up with his observations in the next lecture. And if he wants to say something today, he can say that. But before that, may I request Dr. Amita Valmiki, okay, because she has a concern, and clubbing this question from Sravani Mishra and what Valmiki Madam has got to say, Professor Maraji will reply. Valmiki Madam.
Hello. It was such a wonderful lecture, and thanks for it. Always pleasure to listen to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Very nice.
My point was basically that who wrote the religious scriptures. So it is religious scriptures, or religion as such is also the product of men. And always the power play, as Hannah Arendt and many other feminists who have emphasized, even up when Foucault says everything politically oriented, and this dominance, keeps one wants to be in power. And the circle goes on, the vicious circle. In India, especially, our gender equity concept is totally different from the Western ideology, because there is suppression of women, and there is retaliation by women, and they strongly speak about it. In our country, we live in paradoxes. The paradox number one, excuse me, sir, I will only 1 minute. The paradox number one is that within religion, you glorify women, and in practice, as sociology of religion, that practices with women, for example, are at completely at the fringe, because professor in sociology, Professor Jogdand from University of Mumbai, retired one, and he put this point very clearly in one of his books, that men, then Brahmin women, then you have all in under all sections, all the circles. Ultimately, the most suppressed is Dalit women. So again, within this is second paradox, and third one, and we talk about equality. And the third paradox is blame game that India plays. Now, Hindus will always say, look, we have so many rights for women, Islam doesn't have. Well, the blame game goes on each other. And these triple paradoxes are to be solved. How they can be solved? Of course, social ethos is very much required. Scientists and many other thinkers need to come together. But I find that a drastic change can come only because religion is so intrinsic to human existence. Professor Alok Tandon would object to this probably, but it is so intrinsic to our lives that why don't we take mystic saints literature that talks about gender equity? Why don't we revive that literature? Why don't we narrate that literature and make it, part of our lives? Like writings of the Theri Gathas, for example, that we have. Elaborate writing, Akamma Devi or Karaikal Amiyar, Soirabai, Dalleshwari, so many of them. So why can't we revive this literature? My point was only that. Thank you, sir. I'm very sorry for taking longer time.
That was so nice because your comments and your responses are always very.
Sir, Marazi sir, can you please increase your volume, sir? Can you please
I'm just doing. Okay. Basically, whatever Madam said, Valmiki ji has said, and she has been always, mashallah, talking in a very positive manner, and her reactions are always very, very, I should say, insightful. And very, very, astute as well. So there have been whatever she said that, for example, who has written these scriptures. This discussion has been going on there from very beginning. But let us see the scriptures, not the writers, as has been there in new theory, death of an author. So let us see what scriptures say, and then we can think that what they have said about women, what they have said about men. And if there is some discrepancy here and there, then we can sort it out, and that's possible. My take on this subject is that we need to be dispassionate when we are studying scriptures also. Let us be not biased. For example, I want to study Hinduism. I want to know what is the status of Hinduism, women in Hinduism. I need to see at least the basic books of the scriptures of Hindus. Then I need to study also something of the Ithas and some epic literature and other things as well. Then I can go for the secondary sources. That is the norm. In the same way, for example, if any person wants to know what is the status of women, they can't, in Islam, they can't discuss about that on the basis what an Afghani has done or what a Kashmiri is doing or what a person is doing individually. That is also very much important. We have to take cognizance of whatever is being done wrongly on the name of religion, and we need to chuck that and denounce that, whatever wrong is being done by any person. And they are denigrating their religion, own religion. But basic point, as a scholar, as an academician, we need to see what is the scriptural position about the subject, and then analyze dispassionately without any clouded mind. That is very first prerequisite. And second, these subjects were not being discussed earlier. When the feminist movement started taking place, then people started thinking about this, who is the author of and what is the gender of God and this and that. So this is the problem of our time. So we can discuss this, but those days, this was not a problem and no one was questioning this at all. Now we can just talk about that. Second point is that whatever you said about mystical poets, you are right. I was thinking that maybe some lecture will be on the mystical approach towards the problems of women. Laldet is there and Laleshwari is there, and we have so many, as you mentioned, so many Hindu scholars and Indian scholars as well. And then we have Persian scholars, and then we have Christian scholars, women scholars. And we can also have a discussion what Sufis say about that. Basically, if the actual, as has been said by Dr. Abdul Kalam, that religion has to graduate to spirituality. If religion does not graduate to spirituality, it becomes just a mockery sometimes, I should say. Religion should take us, elevate us. It should just make us to transcend our limitations and our biases and caprices. If we are just using religion for the worldly gains and non-religious purposes, then this is mere exploitation of the religion, and this is totally disservice to the religion and defamation of the religion. As a student of philosophy and religions, I can say this, and mostly people are doing nowadays these things. But actual, question of the religious scriptures and the history of religion and the sociology of religion, which you mentioned about, and I am always talking in the practical terms also what is happening on the ground. I am myself associated with so many women organizations, and we are working for women here in Kashmir, for example, who are suffering from cancer. Shama Foundation, I am also one of the trustees of that, and we are trying to help orphan girls, and we are trying to give some scholarship to the girls who are poor, who are not able to afford higher education. And we are also supporting women to go for their marriages, and also we are helping some widow-headed families. In practical field, we are also working. I believe in practice because religion has to be practiced. Otherwise, it becomes just like a monopoly, as is happening everywhere in the world. So in this way, we need to have a dispassionate study of all these subjects. And whatever you said, I agree with you. And we need to just not make religion as the tool to oppress women. Rather, it should become a liberating force for women's rights. And whatever wrong is being done on the name of religion, anywhere, with women especially, the people who are having any conscience, they are having conscience, and they are very conscious about their, I should say, responsibilities. They should raise their voice against that, and they should not allow people, disgruntled elements or the unscrupulous people, to just defame the religion by their, such type of activities. But we should take also help of those people who may not be religious, who may be even atheists, but they may be philanthropic. They may be feminists. They are working for the women's cause or the cause of the poor people. So we should support with them also. And there is no bar in this way. And we all need to work together in order to upgrade the status of women in our society, irrespective of the caste, color, creed of the women. Basically, women, they are sisters, they are mothers, they are daughters, and we have to take, and if women is being victimized in a society, that is a sick society, that is not a healthy society at all, I should say it. And from any religious point of view I have gone through, this can't be justified at all. And from philosophical point of view, although our philosophers, because of their own misunderstanding about various things or their personal problems, they have just also, done not justice to the women when they just have espoused such type of theories, some of which I have mentioned today. So in this way, we need to have a dispassionate look towards everything, whatever is happening, whether on the name of religion with women, on the name of other such type of customs and rituals and taboos or superstitions. So that all needs to be challenged on the whetstone of philosophical, epistemology and philosophical and religious sociology of religion. Then only we are able to elevate the states of women and help our society to live an honorable and dignified life in our society. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Marazi, for your beautiful response. Well, Dr. Amita Valmiki's madam's question reminds me of Sigmund Freud's assertion that religion is primarily created by men and secondarily imposed on women. You see the statement. Religion is primarily created by men and secondarily imposed on women. So you see the status. So that is the whole problem. Thank you, madam. Thank you, everyone. Well, another good question that I see from Sravani Misra, she has a very pertinent question. She said, why there is a conservative outlook towards women in religious terms, And that sort of conservative attitude is not shown towards men, but that is shown towards women. Why religion? Okay, that's something about where God is at the center. He is taken as the ruler. He is taken as the creator. He has created both the sexes. But when we interpret religion and when we define God, why this discrimination? Why a conservative outlook is shown towards women and not towards men? A very pertinent question,
Very
Mr.
good.
Abdul.
Yeah, I would respond if I'm allowed. So basically, whatever Sraupani Mishra ji has mentioned, asked a very good question. If you ask me from the Islamic point of view, let me tell you, there is no such conservative view about women at all. What mullahs are maybe doing, what some Muslims may be doing, or some people based on their own tribal traditions they are doing, this has no validity from the Islamic point of view at all. I can talk about other religions also, but this time, if I will just you allow me, I can just tell you, there is no conservative view about women. So Quran has been categorical that men and women have been created from two persons. One is man and second is woman. So we are progeny of Adam, and Prophet says, "Kullukum min Adam, Adam min turab." Everyone has been created from Adam, that is Adam, and Adam was created from soil. So la fazal Arabin ala ajamin. There is no superiority for the Arab on the non-Arab and non-Arab on the illa bi taqwa, but on the basis of your piety. In the same way, as I mentioned the Quranic verse that men we have created you from the men and women. So there is no discrimination because you are man or woman. And there are, in Quran there are so many chapters which are named after women. For example, Maryam, there is Mary. There is one complete chapter, and there is Surah Nisa that talks about the rights of women. And it has been said that both have their rights. And even women have been given more rights in Surah Nisa than men. And it has been said by some scholar that all the prizes have been taken by the women. Gold prize has been taken by women. Silver prize has been taken by women. And bronze has been also taken, and man has been given only the consolation prize, that you are this and you are that, and he has all the responsibilities, and women have no responsibilities, but every right has been given to them. I don't think so that there is a conservative view of religion towards women, but if it is there, this is not religion at all. This is the distortion of the religion, because woman is the partner with Adam, so far as creation is concerned. And had there been no woman, there would have been no creations and nothing creatures in this world at all. And woman is, as has been said by Prophet Sallallahu, at the feet of their mother is their paradise. So you have to serve your mother. And one man came to Prophet Sallallahu and he asked, whose right is more than anyone else on me? Prophet Sallallahu said, your mother. Then he asked, whom? He said, your mother. Then he said, whom? He said, your mother. And fourth time he said, your father. So in this way, there is positive view towards mother. And we have to, if we just do take care of our mothers, and if we are disloyal to them, disobedient to them, then our fate will be very wretched from the religious point. I am talking about from Islamic point of view. So in this way, there is no negative viewpoint at all. Rather, we have to always look towards women with with lot of love and reverence. We cannot think about them in any negative sense or in conservative sense. But if someone is doing that, it is ignorance, because of the ignorance. But if you ask me from the scriptural point of view, this has no validity, this has no justification at all. And we need to discover the actual status which has been given to women by the actual religions and which have been always there. And we know in Hinduism also, a lot of respect is being shown to mother, and they just touch their feet whenever they just want to go anywhere. And in this way, it has been not there. But some prejudices here and there have crept in. That has been everywhere. So that we have to reform those all things. Rather, we should not blame religion for that, because this is not religious at all. I know this is just the ritual superstitions of the people, which have just crept with the passage of time at a particular stage, and because of other reasons rather than religious or spiritual or mystical. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your response. Thank you so much. Well, there is no problem in the text as far as women are concerned. It is only the practice that has become really difficult, and that is what is to be seen. As even Dr. Tandon has pointed out, there is no problem lies in the text, the religious text, may it be Islamic text, may it be Hindu text or Christianity, whatsoever. there lies no problem. Everything is perfect and fine. The practice has been a sort of the interpretations have been somehow difficult, and the practice is somehow a real practice. What that is said in the text is somehow missing, and that is what we need to do. That's how the sociology of religion is much a need of the day, and we need to look at the practical side so that the text really speak in practice. It's not just the text remain. Yes, yes,
I
sir.
just want to add a little. The thing is
Yes, sir.
that first of all, we should not identify religion with scriptures only. Religion is a big, big social phenomenon. Number two, any scripture is interpreted, reinterpreted, and it is reinterpreted several times. It is in the nature of scripture that it has to be reinterpreted many times. And with their own interpretations, every power group, those who want to subjugate women or to do injustice to any section of the society, they reinterpret and they say this is the real religion. Can you say that Taliban are using Islam, or they are saying that this is the Islam? In the same manner, there are many terrorists of different religions. They say this is our religion. This is not, we are misusing the religion. So here I just am reminded of Gandhi. He says that religion is doubly distilled. First of all, if it comes from God, then it comes through a prophet or somebody, a mediator. He interprets it. And then again, the same thing is reinterpreted by the masses and the other people. So this business of reinterpretation continues, and we cannot reach any sort of real religion, what we say. And we have seen that every big thinker in any religion, he comes out with his own interpretation. And he said that this is the real Hinduism, this is the real Islam, this is the real Christianity. So how long we can go on doing this business? I think feminists have rejected all this, and they have only concentrated on the real practices in the society. How women are being subjugated, how they are being given injustice, and how the relations of society are to be changed, for which religion is used as a justification. That's why Marx said religion is the opium of the masses. You may say that it is an extreme view, but since looking at the masses of this country only, can we say, was it totally wrong? Or when you talk about Freud is also not having a very good opinion of religion. He was talking about Russell. Russell will say that religion is because of the fear and the ignorance. So this whole idea of religious faith and the paradox and the contradiction we were talking, that all religions preach love and all religions are doing violence throughout history. How this is to be understood, unless and until we bring out religion from the just scriptures and our own scriptures.
So
And
whatever you
see,
said, yeah, whatever you said, no.
I think I've taken too much time,
No,
but
come
I
on,
think
it was good.
this is a good issue, and we need to discuss further. We need some feminists also to give their presentation in the topic feminism and religion. Then this Professor Marazi's lecture will be balanced. Thank you.
Just one point, if I am allowed, just one. I would just, although whatever you said, sir, we just put for thought for us, and whatever questions you have raised are very pertinent questions, and we need to respond to those questions and think about that. And it's not necessary that we may get reply to all questions just in one sitting. It will take time, Whatever you said about interpretation, that is with other books also. That is with the Marxian interpret. We have to interpret Marxian books also, Capital also. Without interpret, there's no way. And we have to interpret other books as well, whether they are secular books or religious books or whatever they are, mundane books. Even in science, we have to interpret. But you're right. So, but there is scope for interpretation, and that is known as ijtihad. And through ijtihad, you can make the problems of times to be solved by your scriptures. And that has been going on from very beginning. But if the people are right and they are sincere, then they will definitely interpret the scripture in such a way which will be very good to the humanity. But if you have your own personal, interests to misinterpret anything, and you can misinterpret Marxism also. As nowadays, we know what is happening on the name of Marx, what is happening on the name of other philosophies. So in this way, it is basically the sincerity of the people and the people who are just interpreting scriptures rather than the books only. So in this way, whatever you said, you're right. So far as second point is concerned, so we need to just take both people together on board, whether communists, whether atheists, and then start a dialogue and try to have a common program, minimum common program, upliftment of the women. For example, the veneration of women or the safeguarding of the women. So these should be some common concerns, social concerns, and we need to join hands, whatever such proposals are there, and there we should not be biased because of this reason or that. And I am always for that if there is some such initiative is being taken so that we can help our community or humanity or women. So we should do that. As a philosopher, students of philosophy, we can help even the people of religious denominations to think better. We can intervene and we can just interpret as has been done by our scholars earlier. Saint Augustine did the same, Aquinas did the same, Ghazali did the same, Radhakrishnan did the same, and other scholars of all the denominations, they tried to interpret religion in such a way which became, humanitarian, I should say, project, rather than misrepresent religion. And anyone can misrepresent anything if he or she is not sincere. Sincerity is more important than the scripture or book. If we are sincere, then definitely we will see positive elements in each and everything. And if there is something wrong, then we can talk also about that, and we will try to reform that. And we need such type of tendency to reform whatever wrong is being done on this name or that name, and whether that is religious practice which is wrong. Let us not let us object to that, because God will, if it is really, if any book is from God, God will always do good to the people, and he might have never written such things which are against humanity or against any gender, because all are the creations of God. So God is good to all, and he is benevolent to all. He will be never biased to, if he is Rabbul Alamin, that is, he is the Lord of the universe. He is not Lord of men only. He is Lord of women as well. He is Lord of creatures, even animals. So in this way, if we take in this positive sense, then we are able, even being religious, we can help our communities. Thank you very much. But your insights were very good, and these give us food for thought for other lectures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Marazi, for your views. Well, Professor Marazi wants to take the issues concerning women and tries to solve them through the scriptures. But Dr. Tandon sees that the scriptures have to be have to pass the test of real application in social relationship. That's how a bit of difference. So nothing wrong in the scriptures. So that scriptures have to pass the real test of application in the society, in the social relationship, in the human behavior, so that we create a feel in us that we are human beings. We are not male or female, we are human beings. That sort of attitude should build in through the scriptures. It is only then every discussion will turn fruitful. Thank you all. Thank you, Professor Maraji, Professor Tandon, Professor Rajit Ghosh, and everybody. Shravani Mishra Madam, Amita Madam, everybody for a beautiful discussion. And I should thank Professor Maraji for bringing in such good thoughts, for bringing in the comparative literature. And thank you so much. And because of this lecture, many things could come in for discussion. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for everything. Now let us move to let us move to Dr. Maharana for the final close. Yes, and I request Professor Maharana to propose a vote of thanks, sir.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, Dr. Rao. Today we have a very long discussion, and the discussion of the learned professors has inspired all of us. And today, the Professor Marazi, the OA Professor Marazi has presented the objective study and a very comprehensive study on feminism. It is very philosophical, and it has attracted all, and it has led the entire discussion for a long time. And on behalf of philosophy family, it's my pride privilege to offer hearty gratitude to Professor Marazi for his paper, for his objective study, and for his comprehensive study on this issue. And the way he has responded to all the learning professors, it is also very praiseworthy. I salute Professor Marazi for his, for his discussion and for his responses. I must offer my gratitude to Professor Abhinas, Professor Roma Wani, Professor Ranjit Ghosh, Professor Alok Tandon, Professor Amita Balmeki, Shabani Misra, and all others who have taken a living discussion and active discussion with the speaker, and all the discussions have made us inspiring, and it has strengthened our outlook, it has strengthened our thought, and it has given us an opportunity to think in a new way of taking the religion and philosophy in that is in while discussing the feministic theory. And today the conceptual discussion of Professor Alok Tandon has also inspired us, the way he has given his remark, he has given his observation. So today, I don't want to take the name of one or two. So I salute all the question raisers, the way they have taken the discussion, and they have ended also the discussion, and it has opened our eyes to think on the issue. And Professor Marazi has also said that he will discuss the topic in the next webinars, and it will also open our ideas on feminism, and it will also give a new outlook for all of us to discuss the issue. Okay, then I also extend my gratitude to Professor Dr. K. Omanan Rao for his good way of moderating the entire issue, and thanks so much. Again, I extend my thanks and gratitude to Professor Marazi and to all the learning professors, those have taken active role in the discussion, and those have also remained present, okay, till now, to witness the entire discussion. And I think today this lecture, this program has benefited all the viewers to take the issue in a new way, and to take it with a new new joy. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Maharana. We also thank you for coordinating this event. Well, thanks so much. Well, I should again thank Dr. Marazi for his wonderful lecture, and we want a part 2 and part 3 of this lecture series very soon, and would be happy if he announces his date so that we can have a very good discussion on this, and a very nice topic to discuss also. Thank you so much, and I thank all for participating in this event and making this event so good and nice. Thank you all. Namaskar. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir.
Namaskar. Namaskar.
We should also thank Professor Manvinder Singh Sahab and Amin Sahab and others. They have been so kindly present here, and they have had rapt attention. Thank you very much all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Namaskar, everybody.